How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today I have the pleasure to talk to Ron Marz. Welcome back to the channel, dude. How are you?
Thanks. It's lovely to see you virtually instead of in person like we did a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we just did a few weeks ago. It was really good to see you, man. I always enjoy talking to you, and so I'm glad to have you back. And Happy New Year. It's been a minute since I had you here. I think the last time I had you on, it was you with let me see, Lanning. I think it was Andy Lanning.
Oh, Andy Lanning,
yeah. You guys, it was both of you on talking about your Revolution book. This time around, Zoop is doing another project, so a big thank you to Jordan for putting all this together. They're doing the Shinku Complete, and that one to me, I think is a really cool crowdfunded book. Because you co-created the character, or you created the character with Lee Moder, right?
Yeah. It the book is collecting everything of Lee's that did not make it into print yet. So we've got a fair number of story pages, about an issue and a half, and then a bunch of covers, pinups, designs. So the notion here is to collect everything that's been in print and all of the unpublished stuff that Lee left behind. So you get this is the Lee Moder Shinku volume. It's going to have everything in it. It'll be an oversized hardcover, so that we can hopefully get this into the hands of people who either saw Shinku the first time around when we did it through Image, or maybe are going to discover it for the first time now.
Well, just you got some fans in the stream. Hello, and hello, Mr. Marz and Omar. Kyle Rayner fan here. And look at that. Oh, you got it here. I'm going to highlight Ron. You got to check out this picture behind him, this poster. Look at that. That's so freaking awesome. Okay, I got to ask you, because we haven't talked since this came out. How ecstatic were you that those Omnis actually made it to print?
I was stunned. I was stunned when, we talked about this a little bit when I saw you in Kentucky. I was stunned when I got a note from the editor at DC that said, "Oh, we're going to put that stuff back into print," because I just figured that was never happening.
Right.
That those, a chunk of my career of crossovers of Green Lantern aliens, Batman aliens, Batman Tarzan, and particularly the Marvel versus DC stuff were just never going to be available to get reprinted. Because of the relationship with the two companies. And they said, yeah, we're doing it. We're putting out 2 omnibus volumes, and would you like to help us put it together and write some stuff for it? So obviously that's the sort of thing you say yes to. And I'm really thrilled with how the books came out. They are, to my knowledge, they're not a whole lot of copies left out there, even though I'm sure the print runs were substantially overprinted from what the orders were, because I think people have a sense that you get it now or you might not be able to get it at all.
Absolutely. It's one of those things when they're like, we're going to have one print run and that's it. Whenever you hear somebody say that, it's like a band, right? Like this is our last tour. We're never touring again until the next time. But with something like this, where it's 2 big properties coming together, and a lot of legal talk was done behind the scenes before they could even approach you, right? To say, hey, would you like to help us put this book together? Then it's definitely one of those, this is a one-time print run until the next time, but who God knows when the next time will be.
Well, I would love for it to go back to press. Obviously, that's good for everybody. It's good for stores. It's good for the creators inside the book who get royalties on it. But we'll see. It was a Herculean effort by editorially DC put both books together and Marvel approved. But they did a hell of a job especially in sourcing all of the back material and all of the stuff there's stuff in there that I didn't know existed. There's stuff in there from my files, from the filing cabinet that's right next to my desk.
Did you know that was going to be used? Because I assume they asked you for those kind of things, right?
Oh yeah, they said, what do you got? And I said, well, I happened to have a pretty big stack of material that I had just scrolled away in a file. Mostly notes from that time, memos that had come through about the project. And I didn't really save it for posterity. I just saved it because, okay, we're done with this thing now. I'll take this stack of documents and stick it in the filing cabinet. And I had forgotten about it for the most part. But once the editor called and said, "Hey, we're doing this," I started digging into the files and realized, oh, I've got a pretty big stack of stuff here. So original scripts, my notes from the original meetings, just a hodgepodge of stuff, and including stuff that, the internal memos that had gone back and forth between Marvel and DC that I had been copied on just for background. And I think, unless I'm mistaken, I think those came through on faxes. This is long enough ago that these are copies of faxes that I saved, which for a chunk of our audience, I'm sure faxes don't even mean a thing.
See, I love stuff like that, dude. Like, that is my favorite thing about, at least to me, about these Omnis, and mainly Omnis, right? Because in absolute editions, you're already getting big books and extra material. But Omnis, they can fatten those suckers up, man. And I feel like that, to me, I love movies that have like limited edition audio commentary by the directors, the producers, the actors, the behind the scenes, all the special goodies. That's what I love about Omnis. I know some people complain like, oh man, half this omnibus was nothing but extra matter, like all the back matters, and like, why do I want that? I want the story. Because there's a lot of nerds like us that actually love how these things happen, and and the stories behind the scenes, man. I love hearing that stuff. I loved your introduction. I thought it was really great, how everybody had their introduction afterward. And I think, of course, one of the guys missing was Mark Grunwald, who we lost. Oh my gosh, almost the year I graduated. This is almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago now.
Good Lord. But yeah, I love that stuff, man. So I know it may not mean something to everybody, but I love looking at things like that.
Well, I think, I and to their credit, the editors at DC, Alex Gaylor for the Amalgam Omnibus in particular, just scoured every place he could find to get that material, some of the art material that's in the back. And reasonably, if you're going to spend $125 or $150 on a book that you've probably already read, we've got to give you extra stuff. We've got to, make it worth your while. So all of the stuff that's in the back is, to me, that's, I wrote half of the book, so I skipped all that stuff and I went right to the back matter, because to me that was the most fascinating part, because it contained a lot of stuff that even I hadn't seen.
And had you forgotten about?
Yeah, there were a bunch of odds and ends in there, and I
didn't even know about the trading cards, man. The trading.
Yeah, cards. The cards. I hadn't looked at those cards in a couple decades, and I wrote the card backs. So just
you did.
Going through all that stuff was sort of a memory search, because I hadn't really thought about much of it, because I just figured there was never going to be a chance that would be reprinted. But when this opportunity came up, it was the floodgates kind of opened, and just I was like, oh, we got let's get the cards in there, and let's get the card backs in there, because they're written from the standpoint of Clark Kent and Peter Parker, and we tried to gather everything that could possibly be relevant.
Do you think it's everything?
It's, well, obviously there's a couple issues missing, right?
Yeah.
And I get it. I understand why they're missing.
I think most people do.
There's no good answer to it. We discussed it a lot, and those decisions are made far above editorial or even the freelancers being involved. So on the one hand, I wish it was 100% complete. But on the other hand, I completely get why it's not in there. And you can't change history, unfortunately, and you don't want to reward anybody for being involved in a project that would have made them a few dollars. So
yeah,
that wasn't the only reason that they weren't included, certainly, but it's just it's a messy situation.
Always whenever I do overviews on my channel of books with creators like that, I try to tell people ahead of time, like, I don't like it is ultimately up to you, right? Like what you want to purchase, it is your money, and you can look up exactly what happened, and that is up to you. There are people that don't care. Like, yeah, I mean, give me it's comic books. I don't care about what these people are doing behind the scenes. And then there are people that do care. And they're like, no, absolutely not. I will not purchase any of these books. I try to remind people, though, like when it comes to comics are it's a combined effort, right? It's Ron Marz writing the stories. It's Claudio Castellini, I believe was the gentleman's name, that drew the comics, right? You got inkers, you got colors, you got letterers. So to me, it's like a work effort, like a group project. So it's not it doesn't become just the work of Ron Marz, but I completely understand why people also cannot separate the two.
Yeah, like I said, it's that situation in particular, and other situations where creators who are very much persona non grata, not just in the industry anymore, but in society anymore.
Yeah,
it's a messy scenario, and there's no good answer. I guess everybody just has to figure out the answer that works for them.
Brother, it's got to be hard to be like wanting everything, and how do you even argue against that, right? Like, yeah, it's just like I wouldn't even know what to say. Well,
and there's certain stuff. There's certain stuff that just crosses a line that none of us are willing to forgive, and that's one of them. So I get it. You get caught embezzling and you serve your 2 years. Okay, fine. But there are some instances where the transgression is so unforgivable that you're just going to be erased.
As it happens. Claudio Castellini. Any chance we see? I haven't seen Claudio's work inside comics for a long time.
He has not done much. He did a few covers for Silver Surfer Rebirth when Ron Lim and I got back together at Marvel. But Claudio is mostly doing some covers, and he's mostly doing private commissions, living a very satisfying life in Spain.
Oh, okay, Mr. Marz, let's talk about what's important. Congratulations on the fantasy football championship. Do you post all this stuff online?
Yeah, because I'm in a league with Phil Hester, Andy Parks, Gordon Purcell, Pete Krause, a number of other creators. Our league commissioner is Dan Jurgens, and that guy. Okay. And I won the championship this year. So Phil, who was the champion last year, has to deliver the trophy to me when I come to Iowa in end of May, early June.
Is there a physical trophy? You guys?
Physical trophy with nameplates on it, and yeah. So Phil said, "Do you want me to, mail it to you, or do you want me to hand it to you in Iowa?" And I'm like, "Oh no, there's got to be a public ceremony with your shame contrasted to my triumph."
This is a question I don't see often. Mike, thank you for the super chat, my brother. One of my favorite 90s comics was your run on Superboy. Can you speak about your experience on that book? I don't see a lot of people talk about Superboy. Most people are like Kyle Rayner, right? Kyle Rayner, Silver Surfer, Thor.
Yeah, well, they don't talk about my Superboy run because it wasn't very good.
You're so hard on yourself, man.
I had fun doing it. We struggled to find the right artist because Tom Grummett had left the book, and Tom was great. Tom is in a lot of ways the Superboy artist.
He was the young or Teen Titans, right? Like he was drawing young superheroes. He was really good at it.
So we struggled for a while to find an artist that was going to be a good fit, and one of the artists that was to me was like, okay, let's go get that guy, was Mark Bagley. Mark, had done had done so much Spider-Man work at Marvel, and then was looking for work, and Marvel had just sort of decided, well, he's yesterday's news, let's farm him out. And so Mark was the top guy on the list, and I was like, yeah, let's get him, he'd be great. And DC didn't bite. DC was like, well, we'll find somebody else, we're not crazy about what he does.
They didn't want to go after Bagley.
They want to go after Bagley. And then, of course, Bagley went back to Marvel and did, 100 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, and the rest is history. So we ended up with a Spanish artist named Ramon Bernardo, who was great. Yeah. Very much out of the John Buscema school. But I loved the work. He was a really good dude. But it was so different from what the audience was used to, I think, that it really didn't click for a lot of them. Georges Genti came onto the book afterwards. So I just never got as comfortable on the book as I wanted to be. And by the time we were planning the second year of the book, I wanted to take him out of Hawaii, put him in Smallville with his aunt and uncle, and basically do old school Superboy stories, and send him into the future with the Legion for part of the year too. So I wanted to go back to the Superboy stories from the 60s that is where everybody fell in love with that version of the character. And the editor was not on board with that, and we couldn't come to an agreement on what else was going to happen. So when I was sort of deciding maybe I should step aside and walk away from it, Carl Kiesel reached out and said, hey, anytime you think you might leave the book, let me know, because we're interested in coming back. So, they handed the book to me, and I handed it back to them.
Yeah, definitely reminding them of John Buscema's art. This is the stuff that I love hearing about, like the behind the scenes of why things happen, right? Like we think, like especially as a kid, you think things just magically happen. You get mad at the creators. Why aren't they using that character? Why aren't they doing this? Why isn't that artist back on the book? Yeah, as kids, you really don't realize a lot of the things that are happening behind the scenes. This is a business after all, right? Of getting monthly books out there.
Yeah, well, it's people. Ultimately, that's how all this stuff works. It's interpersonal relationships, and how you mesh with an editor or an artist, or all of that stuff is very interpersonal. It's very much has a big effect on how the run goes, how the books come out. But it's nothing that the audience ever sees, nor do they, nor should they. It's really not saying it's nobody's business, but it shouldn't affect. You guys are getting 20 minutes of thrills for $4 or $5, and that's what you should be worried about. Do I like the story and the art that I'm getting? So a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, I think, is better off behind the scenes, because then it drags you out of the story. It drags you into the real world, and I don't know that too many people are reading superhero comics for the real world.
There are comments about getting lots of praise, man. Most of them would like to know your retro view on your Green Lantern run. Now, I want to piggyback off of that to talk about something you and I shared on social media. We were both really excited. You more so than me, for the Kyle Rayner Compendium. While not an omnibus, I was like, yes, this stuff is finally going to be collected. We got a volume 1, and then they took volume 1 off of the book, and it kind of just sat there. It's been 2 years since that volume came out. But DC has been releasing so many things. They just, in the catalog, the Green Lantern Compendium 1 came out, Rebirth, which has your Ion story. So it's like, It's like the last part of the Kyle Rayner stuff that you did. All 12 issues are collected in there. My question is,
really? See, this is news to me. I had no idea.
So that's why you come to me for breaking news, baby. Yeah, that stuff is in there. And I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a demand for this character, right? To me, he's just like Wally West, which is the Flash I grew up with. And a lot of people grew up with this character as their Green Lantern. So I was like, well, where's that volume 2 of the compendium? Why can't we get the entire run? That is one of my most wanted collections. I don't care if it comes in Omnibus or it comes in thick compendiums. I just want all that Kyle Rayner stuff, because those trade paperbacks, they're out of print and they don't collect a fraction of your run. They don't collect a fraction of your run. They have a lot. Actually, they have a lot more of Judd Winnick's run, which are long out of print too.
It's pretty sporadic. Look, there's a TV show that has Hal and John and Guy, right?
Yeah, I know.
So that obviously there are other factors involved in what gets reprinted than just what's between the covers. That's the reality of it. So is there a volume 2 coming? I have no idea. I generally don't find out.
I will tweet you. I'll message you as soon as I find out if it is.
Yeah, let me know. And certainly, mostly it's a financial decision. It's a choice of Jim Starlin's calling me. I'll call him back later.
You can put him on speaker. I don't. I love that guy. I love talking to that guy. Here's the thing. Right now, DC has really it seems like they have gotten everything, their act together. I don't want to say their act together. They've always been a publishing company, right? Like that's what they do. They're a publishing company. But it seems like now this last year and this coming 2025, the rest of this year, they are just like bam, bam, bam with obscure titles that have never been collected in any kind of format. Like they're doing the DC Finest is crazy. They're doing like the horror, the Devil's Doorway. They're doing like old school Spectre. Finally we're getting some Supergirl, the Peter David stuff.
Peter David stuff, yeah.
Yeah, the DC Finest Big 5 arrive, which is like their war comics. So it seems like that's a good fit. So I think it might come. I was just wondering, you guys, I think there's a misunderstanding when it comes to creators finding out about these books, right? Like people find out long before the creators find out that books are coming out, unless you're doing like a special introduction, right? If you're being sought after by the editor and doing an introduction, then before anybody else does that, hey, this book is coming out one day.
You sometimes you find out way ahead of time, because like for the Omnibus volumes, I wrote the afterword in the first volume, a bunch of stuff in the second volume. That stuff was in more than a year before you guys got the books, because part of it is printed stuff is printed overseas and literally put on a slow boat and brought into West Coast docks, and it takes a long time to get big fat books printed and back over here. Monthly comic, you hit send, the files go to the printer, and 2 weeks later the copies are in the stores. But you often don't find out what's being reprinted, because unless now I know I have some creator pals who are constantly talking to the reprint editors and saying, hey, how about you do this part? How about you do my run on this? How about and planting that seed? And I should probably do that more, but I always feel like I shouldn't tell them how to do their job, so I stay out of it for the most part.
I think it's okay to remind people not how to do their job, but hey, don't forget about this era, right? Like, don't forget that people are asking me. You can always say that too. I don't think we suggest things to Marvel and DC on my channel. We do a poll every year. Which is why I mentioned Kyle Rayner, because that your run on Kyle Rayner was ranked pretty high. And they did, like Marvel and DC, especially Marvel. We actually just looked at the numbers today. They printed like 40% of the top 20 books, or no, top 60 books we sent their way. That's really high.
That's cool.
DC is also doing the same thing. I mean, we're getting like Shade, The Changing Man, like all these books that I didn't think would ever come. I think it's a matter of like, they're now aware that there's this market that they can tap into, like this, it's literally free market research, right? It's like, hey, these are the people that buy the stuff in collected editions. Maybe let's see what they want. And your book gets brought up often, man. I'm not kidding.
Certainly the surety of knowing, oh, there's an audience that is speaking for this book. I mean, you want to, because this is publishing. These are, this might come as a shock to you, but publishers like to make money. So,
I always forget that part.
write that part down. But if they know there's an audience that's going to embrace it, if they know that there's an audience that's going to pre-order it, which is always a big thing for stores, big thing for publishers, that if the audience is going to show up and say, get me not one but two copies of that thing, that goes a long way into helping them make decisions, because you don't want to print 5,000 copies of an omnibus and not sell 3,000 of them.
Yes, that's the last thing any publisher wants, right? They don't want to see
then you get an unpleasant phone call from somebody, on a higher floor than you.
Ron, you promised me all those YouTube people wanted an omnibus. What happened to that? I will say nostalgia definitely has a price, and I think there is definitely that nostalgia for that character for people that grew up in that era, and that was the introduction to Green Lantern, and that was their introduction to DC Comics as a whole. And
we're all lazy. We don't want to go searching through long boxes if we can just pick it off the shelf.
I'm too old for that nonsense, man. Give me a book.
If I can, if there's something that I know that I have in a long box downstairs, but I don't know where it is, or I can just buy a new one. All right, I'll buy a new one. My time is worth the money.
Oh my gosh. Hey, Ron. Dude, you know what's funny is I don't know if Ron remembers this. I had Ron on when I had a podcast in 2005 called About Heroes. And I had Ron, and I asked him this question about the term. He's asking, how do you feel about the term fridging women in refrigerators that Geld coined? Do you find it unfair? And I asked him something about that, and I think by that point, you and Gail were really cool, and you joked about it.
Gail and I have been friends for years. Gail and I have never not been friends. And her point was totally valid. It is still totally valid. And I get it, and it's a good conversation to have. So the overall thing, the overall statement is, it's a good conversation to have. The reasons for that being a trope, the reasons that that's particularly a comics trope, are more nuanced than just, everybody hates female characters and we do bad things to them. And Gail and I talked about this at the time, that, some of it has to do with the fact that most of the lead heroes were male in comics for a long time. Still somewhat true now, but it's starting to balance out. So if you want to do something that has a permanent echo in the book, you have to do something to the supporting character, to the supporting cast, because your main hero is not going to end up dead, and it's not going to stay there. It's not going to stay dead. So certainly for what we did in Green Lantern, the notion was that your main character is kind of an ass and he's not taking the job seriously, and somebody around him pays the price. So for me, it was very much an Uncle Ben moment, rather than a Gwen Stacy moment, because at that point I had not even read the Gwen Stacy death. I knew about it, of course, but I don't think I'd ever read those issues at the time. So, so the sense of a supporting character paying the price for the main character's failure is, it's drama from back to the Greeks. But in comics in particular, because your heroes were all male and because the girlfriend is always the one in danger, we just did it way too much.
Ain't nobody calling it a crowbarring as a trope. And did you ever get pushback from refrigerator manufacturers?
Believe me, fellas, I have heard every joke that has to do with a refrigerator, and I've heard it multiple times. So there's nothing else to be mined there.
When you were working on Kyle Rayner, when that job was offered to you, you knew it was going to be a new character introduced in DC Comics, and you know how comic book fans are. You knew
I was somewhat familiar with how comic book fans are.
You were a little
I wasn't as familiar as I would soon get.
I can't imagine what it was like back then, to take a character out of a long-running series, not of course in those issues, but long before Crisis on Infinite Earths, Hal Jordan had been Green Lantern for so long. Then we had John Stewart and of course Guy Gardner, but to replace him with another character and have that character go bad, how, like, you were like, yeah, let's do it, sounds great. What was the we only saw a little bit of backlash back then. There was no internet, right? Like, there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, there wasn't people like, I am never buying another Green Lantern comic ever again. It was just letter pages back then.
It was not instantaneous feedback like you get now. Okay. So, and thank God for it. It would have been considerably more unpleasant than it was. Now there were, soon after there were, chat rooms and message boards and stuff like that where people could vent, but it was not, they could not come to you directly and piss and moan about things. So it was a much better feedback loop then, because you could engage or not depending on how you felt about it. Mostly it was letters of comment, and we got plenty of those. We got some death threats mailed to the office. We got ripped up comics mailed to the office, and you would open the envelope and the pieces of the comic would flutter out onto the desk.
See, man, you've seen that shit, dude. You get, like, any threats you get online nowadays. I always quote my buddy Jeff, who passed away last year or a couple of years ago now, but he always said, back in the day, the old time comic book writers, they got the real death threats because you had to, like, put a stamp and mail that sucker out. You had to be that angry to go to the post office to mail your letter.
Yeah, you had to stay mad for a while.
Right.
Write the letter, put it in the envelope, lick the envelope, put a stamp on it, walk it down to the post office. Most rational people somewhere in that process go, just watch some more game. It's not
that a long walk to the post office. Maybe I'm not that mad.
Now you get it instantaneously.
And now it's on Twitter, right? Like, I get, like, anytime a hero's replaced, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times?
Yeah, now you get it from some guy who didn't even pay for the book. He just downloaded it from somewhere.
Or heard the review from his favorite YouTuber.
But look, that goes with the territory. It's just part of it. And if you're not, well, you don't have to be cool with it. You don't have to like it, but you do have to take it, because there's no other answer. It's not good, and I wish it wasn't that way, but it just is. People aren't going to behave online. Generally, people behave themselves in person. I
was going to say, out of all those negative things that you ended up hearing later, when you go to shows, though, it's mostly people like, man, I love your stuff. I know when I approached you I was in high school the first time I ever met you at a show. I talked about Kyle Rayner. I love that character. It was a huge line for you and Daryl back then. Like, still are.
That is 99% of what you get in person. Because look, the chance of getting punched in the face, as the chance of getting punched in the face goes up, the chance of being rude and really abrasive in person goes way down. But I think just in general, people are nicer to people in person because you're a person. You're not just a name on the internet, or like you're actually having a conversation with somebody, and everybody's a little bit better behaved and everybody's a little bit more forgiving, even if you're upset about something. So we got our share, and I honestly still get some bullshit online about it. Like
about who? What? Kyle Rayner?
Yeah,
dude, that was 30 years ago. 30 plus years ago.
Your misguided anger at me is not only old enough to drive and buy a drink, it's old enough to, maybe start seeing Social Security down the line. So
that is a long grudge to have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time to hold a grudge over somebody that's made up. I think most people get it. Once in a while you run into somebody who's still that's a motivating factor in their life, is they're pissed off about something that happened to a made up person. But you just sort of shrug and move on with your life. Luckily, when I got into comics as a kid, I think I did my first story at 22 or something like that. So I started very young, and I had come from working at a daily newspaper when I was in college and just fresh out of college. So I already figured out that people were going to be pissed off about what you wrote. Regardless, somebody was going to be upset. That's just the nature of the beast. My first job in the real world was as a sports writer, and I used to get like clockwork. Monday, you would get calls from irate parents whose kids' names weren't mentioned in the high school football story, and you'd be kind of like, "Well, your kid rode the bench for 3 quarters. He didn't do anything. Why do you want me to mention him?" But so there's no rational thought that goes into it. It's just, I want this thing and you didn't do it, so I'm going to be mad at you. So by the time I broke into comics, I had already figured that lesson out. I had already learned that lesson from, people who had been journalists for 2 decades. So that was a huge boon. That was a huge training ground for me to have that armor already when I was a kid breaking into comics.
Man, that is such a good answer. I really like that, and it's a good conversation to have. Like, what you said is really true too about we are people, and I think that does change a lot when you're seeing somebody face to face, whether you like their work or not. Right? You're so angry. I don't know. I was a kid once, man. I would get angry at, like, I can't believe they're doing this to my favorite character. But I was a kid, and then I learned that there are people making these stories, and sometimes it's editorial, sometimes it's them, and at the end of the day, these are just funny books, right? Like,
yeah, well, I think so, and I spend more hours a day than any of the fans thinking about it and dealing with it because it's my job.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I can still, you step away and go, it's just made up stuff. It's just stories. We just made it up. The sort of passion that people bring who are upset with something it's a knife that cuts both ways, because those people who are so passionate about what we do and basically the stuff that we're just making up are the backbone of the business. They're the Wednesday warriors. They're the people who are there every Wednesday picking up the books. We wouldn't be in business, or at least not in the business that we are now, without them. So you have to remember that these people in a lot of ways are the most faithful readers that we have, even if they are sometimes the ones that are the most pissed off and
oh yeah, dude,
sort of the ones who have the most cockeyed view of all this.
I mean,
it's a little too real for him.
I was the same way with X-Men. I was forever an X-Men fan, and I was like, I can't believe I'm still reading this. It's such a weird, abusive relationship that I'm in with the X-Men, and I just can't quit them. And yeah, I always say that, like, when people are like, oh, this is the worst that the X-Men have ever been, and I'm like, no, no. There have been some lows for the X-Men, but I think everybody's like that, right? Like, I think Spider-Man, I'm sure the Spider-Man fans that have been collecting for 40 years, whenever they hear somebody talk about whatever the most recent gripe, but Zeb Wells' run or Dan Slott's run, they just roll their eyes going, no. We survived the Clone Saga. We survived all these things. And they bring up all the stuff, right? Like,
well, it's you want to tell people, like, if you don't like it, just move on. Find something you do like. But that's not the nature of at least a segment of the audience. The segment of the audience is, I have to buy this month in and month out, even if I hate it.
That says something about us, right? As collectors, as readers, as
yes, the obsessive compulsive nature of it all.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like Star Wars fans are the same, right? They always say like that, nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans.
It's exactly, as someone who's written Star Wars, yes, that is exactly true. Yeah, I'm always like, dude, it's space wizards and laser swords. Just take it easy. It was probably not meant for your 45-year-old self. It's a kid's movie. Just take it for what it is. And if you don't, just find something you do like. To me, that's the message that I think I would want people to kind of grasp. Overall, is just like, man, life's short. I went to a funeral this morning for.
I'm sorry, man.
For the mother of two people I play softball with, and that's real life. That's a problem, right? That whether you like X-Men right now or not is not a problem. That sort of thing puts things in perspective for you.
I think that something like that, like a life-changing event like that, definitely puts things into perspective. A lot of things that happen in your real life will put things into perspective. Maybe this isn't the worst day of my life because Rogue and Gambit split up or whatever, right? Like you lose your cat, you lose your job, you lose your parents. Like horrible things happen in real life, and it's.
But yeah, I understand the escapist nature of it, and if the thing that you want to escape to is no longer fitting what you want, I get it. It's, but. Again, just keep it in perspective. Don't be confusing the real life people that actually make these things with the imaginary bad guys that you're upset with.
If doing this, I am very blessed to be doing this for a living, talking about comics and talking about collected editions. And I think about, like, if I didn't have to read some of the stuff, would I be angry? Like if people, either a publisher didn't send me a book, and like, would I be angry at the material that's going on now? Because I get asked the question a lot about modern comics, and I don't know. I still find a joy in modern comics. I was still finding a joy in modern comics long before any publisher reached out to me. And I think my mentality has always been like, if I see something I know I'm not gonna like, I'm just gonna avoid it. Like, a prime example is all those Disney live action remakes, right? Like, I don't see, more power to you if you enjoy them. You want to take your kids and stuff. But for me, like, I like the original stuff, and I don't see a point in them.
Yeah, there's
so many people angry at some of this stuff, man.
There's a huge difference between that's not for me, so I'll pass, and this is an affront to humanity. It should not exist.
And letting everybody know.
Yeah, it just,
that I don't understand, man.
To me, it's a maturity thing. It's we are very tribal. We're very tribal as a culture, and everybody wants to belong to something. And maybe the thing that you want to belong to is like the dudes who are pissed off at Snow White. I mean, to me, that's silly and frankly embarrassing, but it's how people identify themselves. And I think much more so since the advent of the internet is people want to, you know, oh, I'm part of that group that just hates Star Wars because it's not the thing that it was when I was 11 years old anymore. Well,
nothing is the way that it was.
It's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're not 11 anymore. It's okay to let things go.
Man, I was so mistaken when I remember when I joined social media, like I fought it, and I was one of the late people that joined social media, and I'm like, all right, you know, this could be really cool. I'll just join some groups that are into comics. You know, we get to share our passion for each other, how much of the stories that we like and where we can find them now. Man, most of those groups, people were just arguing and fighting. And I'm like, man, I was so wrong about the internet. Like that. Like that.
Yeah, it's you have to find your people. And man, the block button is the best thing in the world. The block button is just like I don't want to hear from you.
I don't even have time for social media anymore, so I just get out. I barely go to any of the any of the groups that I used to frequent. My forums were the same way, and it's crazy. Does that mean you can forget Brad Meltzer, Greg Morales? I actually like Brad Meltzer's Green Arrow run. Thank you very much, and it's Justice League.
They're both lovely. They're both lovely gentlemen.
Wonderful people, I'm sure. I don't have a problem with them, Ron, we've gone on a lot about your stories in the past. I wanted to come back to Shinku because that's what we're here to talk about. This is the Zoop campaign. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show everybody and I want you to tell a little bit for people that just joined and for people joining a little bit later. This is the link right here, and I'm going to show my screen so we can talk about this project. And when I believe tomorrow is the date that it goes live, if I'm not mistaken.
I think we're still going live tomorrow. I got to check with those guys and make sure. But we're trying to make this a fairly, you know, easy, sleek campaign. Shinku is a book that I did at Image with Lee Moder, who passed away about 2 years ago. And it is a modern day vampire hunting samurai. The impetus for it was very much at the time when Twilight was our flavor of the day for vampires, sparkly romantic vampires. Certainly not the flavor that I grew up with. And not the flavor that I was looking for. So I thought, well, let's do a vampire story, and let's have the vampires be the bad guys again. So put that together with my ongoing fascination with samurai culture and samurai visuals, and we did 5 issues, told sort of the first story arc for Shinku, and I think it's some of the best work that Lee had ever done. Not that Lee ever did any bad work. And he left behind about an issue and a half that had never seen print, plus a bunch of covers, a bunch of designs. So this will gather all of the remaining pages that Lee did and everything else, and put it between two hardcovers, and this is sort of in a lot of ways a memorial to Lee, because I couldn't walk away from this and not have those pages be seen. I didn't feel like we could just let those things disappear, and frankly the originals are sitting on the love seat in my office here. So Lee had no next of kin, no family. So I ended up with all of the artwork from stories that we had done together, including all of the unreleased pages. So this campaign on Zoop, which is who we did Resolution with,
Mm-hmm.
is really the impetus behind it is to just make sure that these pages can get into the hands of people who were Shinku fans when the book came out, or maybe people who are just discovering it now. But it's kind of a monument to what Lee left behind.
He was I think he was the co-creator on Stargirl with Jeff Johns. He was the artist in that book, Stars and Stripes. That's where some people may be familiar with him for. And this was originally published at Image. You said, was it part of? It wasn't a Top Cow book, right? It
wasn't a Top Cow book. It was Image Central, and we had intended to keep going on, but everybody on the creative team kind of got busy with other things, and we didn't get back to it. And then eventually the pandemic hit, and everybody sort of went in their own direction, and then we lost Lee, like I said, about 2 years ago. So it really felt like it took me a while to process what we should do with this, certainly, and what we should do with the original art. Should it just sit here in my office and I look through it every couple of months to sort of have a touchstone with my buddy who's gone now, or should we get it out into the world? So some of the pages from the Shinku series are going to be offered with the Zoop campaign. So you will be able to get Lee Moder original art as part of the campaign. The book itself should end up being somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 pages because we're putting everything we can in there.
That is really cool that this is coming together with some unseen material that has never been collected before. Because there was a trade paperback of the series, correct?
Yeah, there's a trade that I think is out of print now. And I love the trade. I love how the whole thing came together. It's one of those things you sort of tend to look at your creator-owned material a little differently than your work for hire stuff, even though they're both fun, they're both great jobs, but you feel a little closer to your creator-owned stuff because you brought it into the world. Anytime Lee and I discussed Shinku, he would always refer to her as our girl, which was shorthand, obviously, but it was also like, oh, we're like her two dads. So having something like that didn't exist before you came together and created it, and now having some of it that's just not available anymore, that has never been available, feels like I have a responsibility to get that stuff into a book so that people can experience it.
Which is why I love collected editions. Like I love comics, and I'm not a Wednesday Warrior. My wife is actually. She's a single issue collector. I'm the collected editions guy, and that's what I love about these. Right? There are some trade paperbacks that have been long gone out of print, and it gets crazy in the aftermarket because I think people are starting to realize that sometimes when a rare trade paperback is out of print, those books are worth a lot more money sometimes than the original single issues.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it was a shorter print run of this stuff. So when something comes back like this, it's really cool. And I'm all for things like this, especially if it's creator owned. And what a great question. William beat me to it. What are you currently working on, Ron?
Bunch of stuff. Somebody earlier asked about my El Borak story in Savage Sword of Conan with Mike Perkins. Is there a chance there will be more? Yes, there's a very good chance there will be more.
What issue was that in?
Issue 4 of Savage Sword.
I didn't see it. The first trade has
it's in the second trade.
Yeah.
Really, really happy with the way the story came out because it was a chance to work with Mike Perkins, who I've known for 30 years. So it's mildly possible that I might be writing another story like tonight. for that. There's another Savage Sword story that's being drawn by, I don't think I can announce who it's being drawn by, but a really good artist who just finished up his run on a Marvel book. So doing some Savage Sword stuff, some more creator-owned stuff. There's a Top Cow series that's been started and we have to get back to. And I'm one of the narrative designers on the Diablo video game franchise for Blizzard.
Oh, hey, I don't think I knew that. That's really cool, man.
So, yeah, that takes up a good amount of my time, but it's a really good gig, and they treat us great. So it's I get to have one foot on each side of the line. There's comics, there's video games. There's some teaching stuff. I never get up in the morning and wonder what I'm going to do. There's always something on the desk.
Busy man with a busy life. That's the way it should be, brother. You ever thought to work on any particular characters, or are you happy to work on whatever editors ask you to? It's a good question. Like there's so much to work on.
That's a chicken and egg question. That's the sometimes you get offered stuff and you go, I never thought about that, but let's give it a try. That's what Witchblade was for me. I never thought about writing Witchblade in my life, but when it was offered to me, I went, well, let me read some issues and try to figure out what works for me and if we can make this happen. So I did, and end up staying on the book almost 10 years. So I think it's always a mix. There's stuff that you want to do because it's near and dear to your heart. For me, that I'd love to write some more Tarzan. I'd love to write some more Phantom. I've done a couple of Phantom stories, and that kind of pulp character always is really appealing to me. But a lot of times it's whatever rears its head. I've tried to not get typecast as much as possible. There are certainly creators in the business who just want to do horror books or just want to do superhero books, but that's never been a way that I approach the job. I want to stretch as many different muscles as possible because I want to try everything. I want to do as many different genres as I can because they all kind of require a different skill set, and I like to tell different kinds of stories. I love pizza. I don't want it for every meal. I'd like a variety, just like the gig.
And excited to read your story in Stardust anthology with Keith Browning.
Keith Browning is awesome. He's a good dude. Keith and I are actually putting together a creator-owned book as we speak. Although I owe him some stuff, so hopefully this week that gets done. Keith is terrific. He was not actually assigned to my Stardust story initially. My buddy Tom Randy, who is also a guy that I'm developing a creator-owned book with, was going to do it, and then Tom ended up getting COVID and couldn't draw the story. So Van Jensen put me and Keith together, and I loved what he did, and so now we're trying to explore some more things to do together. In fact, there's a well, nobody owns it, so I can just. So Keith and I have done a comic for my friend's distillery. So we did a ghost story comic for Omni Distilling Company, which is owned by a buddy, and he just said, "Hey, can you want to do a comic for me?" I'm like, "Well, what do you want the comic to be about?" He's like, "I don't care, just do something cool."
Do something cool. Is that a lot more pressure than, hey man, you want to work on this new Green Lantern book?
Not really. I mean, look, we're just making up stuff. There's not a whole lot of pressure.
Some people have a problem, like difficulty with that, though.
Were I a heart surgeon? That's pressure. I write comics. I write comics and video games. It's really not that big a deal. But those sorts of jobs just kind of come out of nowhere, and you go, "Oh, well, this sounds like fun." So about October we'll have a promotional comic out from Albany Distilling Company, and it's frankly pretty kick ass. It's far better than any promotional comic should be.
Oh, I love hearing that. And this one has me curious too. Any more collabs with Ron Lim in the future? You guys worked on the retro. Let me see. You guys did Silver Surfer, and then there was the Legacy or Captain Marvel, Janice Vale story.
Yeah, we did 3 of them. We did Surfer, Warlock, and then another Surfer that had Marvel's son in it. Legacy. We could call him Legacy back then, and now I guess we can call him Legacy again. There's nothing planned at the moment, but I talked to Ron about a month ago, and we were both like, well, we should figure out something else to do. So we'll see. I'm sure there will be another collaboration with Ron Lim in the future. I'm just not sure what it'll be. But as a writer, when you find somebody that you like to work with artistically or even editorially, you tend to go back to them because you know what there's alchemy there. There's some magic in the collaboration. So Ron Lim, Darryl Banks, Bart Sears, Paul Pelletier, all of these guys that I've worked with over the years. Anytime you get a chance to go back to that well, you do it because you know it's going to come out well.
And it's people you worked with in the past, huh?
There's almost a shorthand that you develop with people that you've worked with over and over again. There's a shorthand. They know what I'm looking for. I know what they're going to do. It really makes the whole process kind of a delight.
What's your favorite Green Lantern story you've written?
I have no idea. I really don't. I liked a bunch of the issues, certainly. If I had to pick one, it's probably Green Lantern Surfer, just because that was such a big deal, cool book to do.
And then led into the DC versus Marvel too.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly didn't intend to do that initially, but the way things arranged, where all of a sudden we knew that DC versus Marvel was coming. I was writing it. The Surfer Green Lantern book would be out first, so we subbed in that last page of Green Lantern Surfer that kind of teases how we would begin the Marvel versus DC crossover. And in retrospect, like, it's a box in an alley and it makes no sense whatsoever unless you had the context of what was coming.
Yeah.
So at the time we were like, oh, this is cool. It's going to lead one right to the other. And now I'm sure most people look at it and go, what the hell is this glowing box in an alley?
And my buddy Mike is excited. He's having a second baby. Found out today. Still in shock. There's a baby on the way. Witchblade was a fun read.
Well, congratulations, Mike. The second one's better than the first one because you have a better idea of what you're doing.
Yeah, I remember the first kid. We were like, we're buying all these like baby-proof things. We're gonna put all these little things on the corner of the plugs so the kid doesn't stick its face. The second kid, you're like feeding it peanut butter.
Yeah, I mean, but like, we had 3, so it was like by the time the third one is like, running around with rusty scissors, you're like,
yeah, man. It's like, yeah, we've done this game before. Oh, hey, Blake, how are you doing? Legend. Ron is the man. He's a good guy. Blake, I haven't talked to you for a second. I need to have you back on the channel. Hope you're doing well. Here is a good question. Is there a particular artist, living or dead, that you wish to be the artist for you? Like, if you had to work on a project.
Oh, man, that, we'll be here for another 3 hours. I have been very fortunate in that I've worked with so many amazing artists. If I had to pick one that I have not worked with yet, I mean, it's hard to. Ultimately, I would say it's probably Kirby or Mobius.
Oh,
Those,
nice.
those are the twin. Those are the twin gods, as far as I'm concerned. But when it really comes down to it, I think Frazetta is probably the one that had the biggest effect on me as a kid, beyond any comic artist, because if I saw a Frazetta cover on a paperback, I'd buy it and read it, no matter what it was. So I think, in terms of making me pay attention to genre fiction and adventure fiction and all that stuff, Frazetta is probably the one that was most influential on me. And certainly, you look back at the comic strip work that he did. Well, that guy's a pretty good comic artist too. He did okay.
He was all right.
You like that kind of thing? He did okay.
What book though? Would it be a Conan book?
Man, I don't know if I get to work.
Have Frazetta draw any. I mean, it's hard.
To work with Frazetta, we're gonna make up something new and $1 million. Probably Conan, because Conan is Frazetta's Conan is everybody's Conan now.
Yeah.
I think to a certain extent, that's what the Conan in everybody's mind looks like. That and John Buscema. I think that's, and when I was a kid, and outgrew comics at 11 or 12 years old, whatever I was, I kept reading Savage Sword, because that wasn't a comic, that was a magazine. Adults read magazine, kids read comics. So I kept reading Savage Sword, probably in no small part because there were naked ladies in it.
I was going to say because of the boobies, right? Because, same.
So I read Savage Sword for a while, until I got kind of 4 or 5 years later, got sucked back into comics because Simonson's Thor came out and Miller Daredevil, and then the watershed of 1986 with Dark Knight and Watchmen. That's when I really got pulled back in as a teenager. But Savage Sword was the one constant that kept me attuned to basically comics.
I think Frazetta, Conan. I mean, you cannot not, right?
Yeah, it was certainly some of the most famous artwork of the 20th century, of any artwork, not just illustration, not just fantasy art, but any art. I'm a big proponent of Frazetta and my pal Bernie Wrightson having created some of the most astounding art of the last 75 years, of anybody doing art, not just the kind of stuff that we love, but commercial art, high-end gallery art, any of it.
It's a good question. How did the opportunity to write Witchblade come along? Was that something that Mark and Company approached you about? And
they asked me when CrossGen fell apart in 03-04.
Oh my gosh, dude, I forgot. Oh my gosh, we need a Scion Omnibus.
Let's hope. I asked if they were doing one, and they were like, "We don't know." Well,
that is the answer, right? We got a few. We got Mystic.
Mystic and Sigil, which
we got two. Now we need that Scion, baby. Give me that Jim Chung.
Well, they're obviously going in publication order. Sigil was the first book. Mystic was the second.
What do you think the third one is?
The Scion would be the third, because that was the next one that came out.
I will tell you this much, Ron, because I like you. When I was supposed to announce, or when I announcing books, I get a list, right? Like, hey, here's all the books from. Let's talk about how you should announce these books, like what order and like what books together. There was another CrossGen book, but it wasn't Scion. But then they pulled it, and I'm like, damn it, maybe next time. So
that's right. I had actually been in touch with the Marvel reprint editor to say, hey, if you do this, I have a bunch of Scion artwork that's never seen print.
My gosh, I will remind them of that.
It was done for Hollywood pitches and guidebook stuff that never came out, and so there's a fair amount of really gorgeous Jim Chung art that most people have never seen. So I'm hoping, and Cyan, gun to my head, Cyan was probably my favorite book.
I freaking love that book, dude. I love that book. Okay, sorry. So yeah, how did it happen after CrossGen ended?
CrossGen ended. Top Cow called me and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, what do you guys want me to do?" And they said, "How about doing some issues of the Darkness so we can see how we get along and how this whole thing is going to work." So we did 4 issues of the Darkness, and it was fine. I had a good time. And then they said, this is working. What else do you want to do? And I said, Magdalena, because I love the costume and the whole notion of the church's monster hunter, and all of that whole backstory is very cool. And they said, yeah, that's great. How about you do Witchblade instead? And I was like, okay. Because they said Witchblade needs the most help. We need to get a handle on what this thing is.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
So I said, okay, well, the honest truth is I've never read an issue of Witchblade in my life. So send me some issues and we'll figure it out. So like 2 days later, the FedEx guy comes staggering up the driveway with this huge box of every issue of Witchblade that's ever been printed. And I read a bunch of them and figured out what was workable for me, what made me hone in on the character. And I said, look, this is cool. I like the concept. I like the setting. I like her as a character. If you are looking for stories that are basically excuses for her clothes to fall off, that's not what I do. But if you want me to take on the book and try to hang some flesh on those bones and make her into more of a 3-dimensional character and try to make her world into more of a believable world, I would like to give it a try. And they were totally cool with it. And that honestly was the last time we ever discussed, well, how scantily clad should she be and all of that. They let me kind of do what I wanted with the book for a long, long time. So sometimes the books that you least expect turn out to be the ones that are the best fit, because I think in some ways you come to it without preconceived notions. You come to it without like, oh, this is the story that I wanted to tell since I was 12, and now I shall do it. Well, maybe you didn't have really great taste when you were 12, so that story's not a great idea. So Witchblade turned out to be a terrific fit. I think to great extent, because the concept is flexible enough that we could tell any kind of story. We could do horror, crime procedural, science fiction, superhero. If we got bored doing the book, it was our own fault, because there was a wide range of stuff that we could do, and we just never really got bored. It turned out to be a really good fit, unexpectedly.
I love that it turned out to be a good fit for something that you were like, yeah, but I don't want to do this, and that was the only conversation you had, and it all worked out.
Now, my relationship with Top Cow is very much like a family. And my relationship with those guys has always been terrific and still is. I really enjoyed working for them, and hopefully we'll be doing more in the future. It's comparatively, it's kind of the mom and pop shop of comics, because it's just a small group of people that have been there forever, and with some really great concepts and some really great characters that they've been mining for 25, 30 years.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Top Cow, and Mark's my favorite artist of all time, and he's such a good guy too. And those characters, still around, and different incarnations is always good to keep them around. That is a good question. We did talk a little bit about this earlier, Mike. See where DC is working on omnis of Green Lantern. Is it just compendiums or now? Well, I just told him his Ion was going to be in the compendium that comes out later. So Ron isn't aware yet, unless he's working on a super secret hush hush project that he's really good at not spreading the word about. This, I think, is a great question. Were there any Marvel DC character interactions that you wanted to get into the crossover that did not make the final cut? I can't imagine like having that many toys to play with. You got everything you wanted to do.
Lots of them. That's really my only complaint with Marvel versus DC at all, is that there was just not enough room to get to a lot of what we wanted to get to. So you can look in the Omnibus actually and see a lot of the interactions that I wanted to get into the book that we didn't have room for ended up as trading cards. Because my list of let's have Batman meet Bullseye or whatever it happened to be. My list eventually made its way to the card guys, and some of those meetings ended up as cards. Some of the meetings that I would have loved to do a more protracted scene with ended up as kind of single illustrations in a montage. I think like the Thing and Human Torch meeting Firestorm and maybe the Martian Manhunter. Just there's so much that you wanted to get in there that was not. There just wasn't room for it. We really had to stick to the main characters and the main battles to pay off any of that stuff with any sense of the number of pages that readers wanted. We just didn't have them, because part of the reason for the project was to get these books into stores as quickly as possible, because the bottom had dropped out of the direct market and they were trying to put dollars into cash registers.
Oh, right. And it came at the right time too, that event. And, as gimmicky as some people say it was, I was working at the comic book store when that event was coming out, and people were so excited about getting to vote.
Yeah.
Getting their voices heard, man. How cool was that?
And the vote was for real. The vote, like the endings that are in the books are the way the votes came out. And we frankly knew how most of them were going to go, because it was a popularity contest. The only one we weren't sure about was Storm and Wonder Woman, because this is the 90s. X-Men ruled the roost.
Yeah,
Wonder Woman was an iconic character, but we didn't really know which way that was going to shake out. So we had to prepare 2 endings for each of the 5 main battles. So I wrote 2 different endings for
included in the Omnibus, by the way.
They're those pages. I think there's 1 page that's just lost to time. But the other 4 are in there, because we had to get both endings drawn so that when the votes came in, they could figure out who the winner was. Superman beats the Hulk, put that page into the book and send it off to press.
And that was very much like the Death in the Family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was.
Jim Aparo had to draw 2 different endings, because it was at that time it was a 900 number that you had to call.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time people think, oh, well, this is just they're letting us vote, but it's not for real. But both of those instances, the votes counted. The votes were very much how those stories went.
Does Ron know that Marvel snuck in a few of his Secret Defender issues into Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme Volume 2 Omnibus?
Yeah, I think I've got one of those sitting on the shelf. Marvel's pretty good about sending you like 1 copy of your Omnibus when it comes out. So yeah, I was, when that showed up in the mail, I was like, well, what is this? Why do I have this? And then I figured out, oh yeah,
that is some of my favorite posts, by the way. Not necessarily from you, but like from other creators going, why the hell did Marvel and DC send me these books? And then they're looking and they see, oh, that's right, there's a story in here from me.
I wrote 60 pages in here.
I love seeing that stuff.
Yes, Secret Defenders was again, perhaps not my finest hour, but it was not a book that I had ever agreed to write. It just ended up on my desk. because the editor had told his boss that I was writing the book without asking me. So I didn't have any choice but to write the book, unless I wanted to throw my editor under the bus, which in retrospect might have been a better idea. But we were literally at a lunch meeting, and the editor, Ralph Macchio, was the group editor, turns to me and says, "So I'm so glad you're going to take on Secret Defenders. What do you have planned?" And that was the first time the word Secret Defenders had ever been spoken in my presence. So I had no idea what was going on, but I just made up some stuff on the spot, and that's essentially what my run ended up being.
I love that you were asked that question. Like, yes. I agree. Yeah, we need some Marz Green Lantern love, man. We need a Thor omnibus. That would be cool. Silver Surfer, baby. Give me that Silver Surfer. Now we got your collection of Silver Surfer it's been really well collected in Epic Collections, though.
Yeah, I think most of my run is in Epic Collections. I know the most recent one that came out was the Herald Ordeal storyline.
Yeah, I love that story, man. You have a bunch of heralds working together. Galactus has a new herald. I'll get jealous, but I would like to, but I'm a big omnibus guy. I love omnis, so I would love to see all that stuff collected one day in a big format. But yeah, the epics they've done a great job collecting Ron's stuff. Thor has been, I think your entire Thor run has been collected in Epic Collection. I think there is maybe one that's out of print. It's the Green Lantern stuff, man. That's what we got to work on. We got to work with, let their collected editions department know how much people want it. So make sure you vote. Come back in May when we start the DC Omnis Most Wanted poll. Because I think it's very important. Like people have said, there's a bunch of different runs that are being collected these days. So your run it means a lot to a lot of people. So I would like to see that collected. What about you? What would Ron Marz like to see collected, like in a big format?
Oh man, most of the stuff that is near and dear to me. I don't mean the stuff that I've worked on, but most of the stuff that means a lot to me as a reader has been collected. Simonson Thor, Wolfman Perez, Titans, Miller Daredevil, all of that stuff has been collected in numerous times in numerous packages, and I end up buying it all in whatever package comes out. So now I've got that stuff that I love in numerous editions.
One of us.
Yeah. I've bought too many stories too many times. So I don't know that there's anything that is out there that I really that I can't get my hands on. Like when I was a kid, my big thing was Avengers. I was an Avengers fan in a big way. The stuff from about issue 150 up to maybe 200 was my prime spot. So that was Perez stuff, John Byrne stuff, and principally the George Perez stuff, because George was the first artist that I recognized as an individual. Like, oh, this is drawn by somebody who I like better than this other guy. So George was the first artist I ever recognized as a fairly small kid, as a person, like as an individual, and I would look for his stuff. But all of that is in either Marvel Masterworks or other odds and ends. I think that the stuff that I would, and maybe it's out there, but the whole Paul Smith, Roger Stern, Doctor Strange run, I know some of that's been collected, but not all of it.
No, we need a volume 2 of the Source Master of the Mystic Arts omnibus is what we need. That Sterno Paul Smith stuff is just my favorite Doctor Strange work. So you got good taste. That Roger Stern Avengers is what we need too. But that's been collected in Epic Collection, and I would love to see that in omnibus format. You're so humble, Ron. I was asking what you would like to see collected of your stuff, because somebody mentioned the Stepan Sajic art that they did on Witchblade. That needs to be collected in a big oversized format. That would be really cool.
That would be cool. We had fun, and that was a lot of Stepan kind of learning on the job. That was some of his first comic stuff, period. So he was figuring out how to do it while we were doing it. And obviously he's figured it out very well.
He's pretty good too. He's pretty good too. All right. I'm going to take one more question because I do not want to take any more of Ron's time, especially since he said he might be writing some kind of Sumerian script later on today. Got to get those gears turning. If you got to work on Avengers, who would have made your team? You know, I never ask creators about this. Like, I feel like I've had you on a couple times now. All right, let's say you're writing Avengers, and the editors are like, "It's free game, dude. You can use anybody." Your 7 characters you pick to be your 7 Avengers.
I'm gonna go with the classics. It's got to be Cap, Iron Man, and Thor.
Okay.
Because to me, it's not Avengers without them. Vision and Scarlet Witch, because it's not Avengers without them.
Wow.
And then the other 2 spots, I might.
I got you. Legacy. I got you, man. Legacy.
It might be Beast and Wonder Man, because
whoa,
that was
you really like that era, don't you?
Yeah, those were. Well, there's when creators, and I saw somebody mention Hawkeye. It should be in the list too. Maybe Hawkeye and Black Widow. Although Black Widow never made sense to me as an Avenger because she's just not powerful enough.
She's got guns.
But Beast and Wonder Man, because I found the book in that era, and I always loved the issues where, Beast and Wonder Man would go out into Manhattan and have some sort of weird, like, non-superpowered adventure. And to me, those stories that were almost palate cleansers, they were very much not the kind of Avengers Save the World stories that you would get every other month. But because they were such a different thing, they were such a contrast to the other issues. I love those stories. And so I think creators of a certain generation will refer to those kinds of issues as Beast Wonder Man issues, where you do something that's a little off kilter from the rest of your superhero stories. So I love those issues. Who doesn't want a dude in a red safari jacket on their superhero team?
That safari jacket was pretty cool. And this is Kenny. How's it going, Kenny? All right, last question. What was your favorite Superman story to write?
The Adventures of Superman story that I did with Doc Shaner.
Oh, okay.
Which I think was in a trade paperback, but it was initially when DC was doing the digital first stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a story that is essentially Superman meets the Iron Giant, though of course we can't say it was the Iron Giant. So there was but there was a large robot that Superman meets that turns out to be from Krypton. So in some ways, it's kind of his long lost brother. And having Doc Shaner draw that story was he was the perfect artist to draw a Superman story. Still is the perfect artist to draw a Superman story. So that's my favorite Superman story I've ever written, because it just humbly, it just works. It's got all of the stuff that Superman story should have in it. It's got him doing big, powerful things, but it's also got him being, the last son of Krypton. It's got him being, he's not one of us, but he's the best of us. And to me, that's what Superman story should have, is that there's a certain sense of loneliness that you're going to get from Superman because he is the last of his kind.
Oh man, That is a great way to end the stream. On that note, this is the link, and I've also put it in the description of the video in case you're watching this later, to the Shinku Complete, and that is through Zoop. That should go live tomorrow, April 1st, if everything goes according to plan. And I just want to thank Ron for joining me today. This was such a great conversation. I always love talking to you, man. Just about your career, your history, and you've got this amazing attitude about comics and the creators behind the scenes, but also the fans and the fan base. So it's always good to hear from you. You're always welcome back anytime you want to.
Just, as long as it's not a softball night, I'm all yours. So there's always fun, and I feel like we have good conversations about things beyond what's on page 37 of the collected edition.
Well, I do want to know, Ron, how much do you know of this new DC versus Marvel stuff? What's going on?
I don't know any. I literally know as much as you do. I know nothing.
You don't know what I know. Then again, I don't know what you know. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and go and check out the Shinku Complete once it goes live, and go and check out Ron's work. You can find his compendium of Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, and you can find his Silver Surfers, Heralds of Galactus. What was the last one that came out? The most recent one. Oh my gosh, you just said it, and my brain is fried now. The Heralds, the
Herald
Ordeal, yes, and then the Thor Epic collections all available. And there are some actually, no, it'll be a little bit before we get to your Witchblade run in hardcover format, because I think they're still on volume 3.
I think the upcoming Witchblade hardcover has my first 6 issues in it.
Oh yeah, so
after that, it's all for good or ill. It's on me.
There you go. So go and check that out.